Okay, now's the time we get political. Each week, we like to break down stories from the three levels of government with CTV's political commentator, Scott Reed. Scott, good to see you as always.
Hey, guys.
Hey, nice to see you, Scott. Okay, and thanks for making it here after your sort of whirlwind trip to Alberta over the last couple of days.
Yeah, no jet lag on my face.
Yeah, no, you look great, buddy. Okay, so let's talk about this because this is a tough look for Canada. Justin Trudeau's at the NATO summit, and of course, it's all been talking about the Canada underfunding our 2% commitment to NATO. Sounds like we're going to get there at some point, but it's sort of gauzy, unclear as to when that's actually happening.
Yeah, and the challenge for Canada is there's certainly to talk about stuff like diplomatic isolation because NATO partners faced with a much more threatening world with land wars in Europe and obviously the aggression that's happening with China are saying, listen, we want all members to commit to a path to 2% of your GDP expenditures on defense. Canada's not there. We have a kind of a plan to get to 1.76. Isn't it fun with numbers? Now the parliamentary budget officer says actually because of changing global economics, that's actually now 1.42%. So the goalposts are moving further away.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Politically, this thing is a lose-lose. All right. On the one hand, if we want to be seen as good partners on these issues, we think about the political dynamic of Trump coming back in the White House, his demands on NATO, his desire to maybe even bust up NATO. You need to act on it. On the other hand, if we act on it, here's some math for you. $60 billion in the next 2-3 years. That's how much it would cost out of our program spending to redirect toward defense. People say they're for it, but if they're for it at the expense of healthcare and education, don't think so. So he's going to go down there, he's going to do a tap dance, he's going to find himself under more pressure, and they've got to think about whether, with Trump coming into the White House, they can afford to just dance on this much longer.
I want to get this quickly. Do people vote on this? Is this going to change votes, intentions at all?
People talk about this. Business leaders come out and say, my God, it's a terrible affront that we haven't hit the 2% target. By the way, we'd also like you to reduce spending overall and cut taxes. Really? How do you square that circle? The truth of the matter is that people, they vote on taxes, on overall economic growth, and on health care. And so people say they want us to do our part for NATO, but they're not going to vote that way.
Yeah, it's the everyday stuff that affects us first.
Absolutely,
that they vote on.
kitchen table.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and speaking of which, this is a political story that touches right on that. The Ford government is really fighting back on OPSU's tagline of, you know, it being Ford's dry summer with his Monday morning booze locator campaign, kind of like the vaccine hunters back in the day when COVID was around and you could kind of track where to get a vaccine. This is with where you can get liquor.
Yeah, absolutely. Kitchen table issues, you say. I'm coming to your house for breakfast. But look, I think what's interesting about it is exactly what you're saying, right? The Premier's trying to respond to the suggestion that he is responsible for a dry summer, and he's basically making the argument, hey man, it ain't that dry. Like, look around, 3,500 locations across the province. The little asterisk is that's true for beer and wine, maybe cider. Less true if you, and I know you just gunned the bourbon back, right? So that's tough for you.
Pina coladas too, yeah.
I think one of the things that's also interesting is they slipped in yesterday this announcement that those 5 commercial locations for bars and restaurants would actually not proceed. And I wonder if there's a little politics, right? Always look at this hand, and this hand's going to do something else. The challenge, I think, over time will be how will the bars and restaurants continue to be supplied? Is that going to be an issue? Because a big part of that map is you can go to any bar and say, hey, give me a 6-pack of beer. Give me a bottle of wine. I'll take it home with you. That's for a heck of a lot more money than you would pay at the LCBO. But it's true for now. So we'll see how long this thing lasts. My guess, it's going to be a long
This looks like
strike.
a pitched battle.
Well, because there's just no basis for compromise here.
Okay, we're going to watch that so closely. In the meantime, municipally, interesting report out of the Star this morning indicating the Eglinton Crosstown progressing well. Still no opening date in sight. I feel like a broken record saying that. But, you know, are the province or city going to be in any hurry to celebrate when this does finally happen?
Well, I'm fascinated by this report in a couple ways, and I'm going deep nerd politics here, okay?
This is what
so
we're
if you look,
for.
why is this report coming in? So first of all, I have a complaint about Metrolinx, right? Provincial agency running the new Eglinton Crosstown. My complaint is this. This is about the 20th report or news conference they've held to tell us they have nothing to tell us. There is no date. When we have a date, which we do not have, we will tell you in advance. That's in advance of the date that we do not have. Don't have a date, right? I get the point. Why do you keep telling me this? This report, I think, is interesting because yet it's another entry into that got nothing to tell you library. But in addition to that, there's a little hint when they say all of the various stations, all these new transit stations that require approval and construction, well, they're all done except for one, the big one on Eglinton, and they sort of lay it on the city. But if you notice the report, they say, well, we haven't gotten certification and approval. My question is this. Are we seeing a little bit of blame redirection, a subtle hint that Metrolinx, maybe the province, starting to point the finger at the city going, hey, man, they're the ones dragging their heels. Like, this thing should be approved. Why don't they get the inspectors in there, rip off that clipboard, lots of check marks, and let's get going? I don't know that that's the case, but it's something I want to watch because I think the potential for real conflict between the province and the city on this issue is growing with every day that it's not opened, because most people think it's the city. Most people in the city think that Crosstown is the failure of the city when it's actually the failure of the province. So I think you're seeing a little bit of blame game maybe starting to peek its head out.
Okay, we just want to see it finished.
Yeah, exactly. Bottom line.
I want to see it finished, and I want to see a big political fight, because that's more interesting. Give me something to read on the subway.
And that'll give us more to talk about, maybe not that next week, but at some point down the road, I'm sure it will. Scott Reed, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Scott.
See you next week.
Appreciate it.